and executing. And as you get older, it seems like it's just a. I really do believe that like we all are capable of doing anything if we really want to, and we have the actual drive to continue to do it to the point of being good at it. It's just a matter of practice. So yeah, I think that the process for me really begins at having family who encouraged me early, and then having a real genuine passion for uh, communicating, and that's really what it is, really. So anyone out there who wants to be creative, I think it's just about connecting ideas with emotions, and then just continuing to do that regardless of what the feedback is. And then you'll, as you do it, I think the feedback becomes more better and better. um, and also seeking people who will encourage you and give you great, give you constructive criticism, but not be discouraging, because we all got something to learn.
There's thank you for that. And I'm wondering, because I'm getting excited, I can get more creative, which I'm getting older at it, so I've still got some time. Are there specific practices that sometimes when you're not feeling good or you're not in a great state that you use to get or kind of get sort of to work that creativity muscle?
uh, Normally it's I step outside of my like chosen medium, and I do my best to focus on mediums that I enjoy just as a fan, that I don't have any sort of critical thoughts, or I don't really look at it with critique. I look at it from a place of just enjoyment, and I normally just go there because when you do something as a profession, you become all of the things around what makes that viable or successful, whatever, can start to play on you. So to sort of separate myself from any of the critique, anything that could, where my critical eye plays a large part, or I have a real strong opinion, or I think we can get that way. I just try and lean into mediums I don't. It's not really my profession, where I can just enjoy, and
Is
then
that
start.
I don't know, like I learned to play the piano maybe like a few years ago, not nicely, just like banging a few chords. And I feel that we're like, I don't ever expect myself to like play piano, but I enjoy it and it just feels good to me. Is that
Right.
what you mean? Like I'm not critiquing myself too much, I'm not thinking it's
Yeah.
good. Do you like pick up a ukulele or start sketching or what kind of things do you do?
Man, for me, it's probably like, this is gonna sound crazy, but like skateboarding. It's like literally like go and fall,
Yeah.
because I cannot skateboard. I'm shit. But the thing that I love about it is the creativity that of skateboarders, and what they can do with it, and style, and it's physicality. There's a lot of technical and a lot of practice involved. And because of all of that, it's sort of like an activity that is a little less um, subjective, because there's an execution part that is gratifying. So even if I can land an ollie or whatever, or get close to a kickflip, I'm happy, and that takes me completely outside of create melody and and lyric, and what is this? How does this measure up to? Because I think naturally, as our brains are built to compute, we just sometimes lean into that, and I have to. That's what meditation is good for me. It's like, let's just bring it back to center. Like, what are we really here for? What is this for? Is to express, emote, communicate emotion. But to recalibrate, I like doing things like skateboarding, or going to ride my motorcycle, honestly.
No, well, I think those things also take, we get into that chattery thinking mind, right? Where we're all in our head and we're worrying about what people think, or we're worrying about ourselves or something that happened. We're not really
Right.
present. And it's one of those things sometimes you just, no matter how intentional you are, you can't get your mind there. And some people call it distraction, but I think it's much more deep than that. Because I
Mm,
feel like with those physical movements where you are being creative,
mm,
you're responding as you're on the skateboard. You've got a goal with a new trick, right? You've
right.
got kind of fear and mastery all like tangled up. And I think that's
Right.
always good for the juice in the brain, I think. I mean, when I
Yeah.
see that. Um, Miguel, I feel in this series we haven't done a great job asking men about relationships
Mm,
and how they manage and function in relationships and intimate relationships. And you have a partner and a wife, I believe. And I don't mean to switch gears so quickly, but it just just struck me. I was wondering what kind of relationship you have advice you have for people, because I think so many we all struggle in that. I mean, everyone, no matter how I don't know, analyzed or mature you are, like relationships are tough. That's I think why we like them. They challenge us. But I was wondering, so many men struggle in relationships, right? We have this idea that like men don't talk about feelings, and
Mm,
you're a man who's actually like working to like get the feeling as pure out there into the world as possible. And so you
mm.
must be really interesting to be in a relationship with. I was thinking might have some tips for us.
That's kind. Look, I'm no doctor, so I'll say that. It's not, but I'll say for us, I think the focus being on being as fulfilled personally will leads to so much fulfillment as a unit, as a together when you come together with a partner. I think you got to start with good. It's like a chef starting with bad ingredients. He's gonna have a real hard time coming up with something satisfying. And I think we all have ingredients. Some of them are great, and they're awesome for us. And then some other ingredients, and when I say that, I mean the way that we think, how we operate. Some of those things you have to sort of go, okay, what's the better alternative? What can I replace? How can I do this better? How can I upgrade the way that I operate or think? And so that my energy is like clear, and I think the more of it I do that, it's just been helpful in so many ways in bringing me and my partner together. But again, I think we started with friendship. We started with um, really similar sort of goals, like life goals and upbringing. So that we kind of had a little bit of a head start in that way. And so I would say, one, you got to really, really be clear about what's going to work for you, you know? And if you're not clear about what's going to work for you, I think it's really starting again with the end in mind. What kind of relationship do you want? And can you be really honest with yourself with that and hold yourself to that? Because if you have that first, then what you build around that will more likely fit into sort of the what's going to be fulfilling. But if you're going into things not clear, if you want you know, a certain kind of relationship where you guys are, we there's a number of ways I could chop this up, but I think starting with the end in mind is really important, and then two, working on yourself is really important, and then three, in terms of communicating, um, what helps us the most is activities where like hiking. This is like I'm trying to think of like actionable things.
Mm-hmm.
Hiking again is like because it's physical. It's a little less subjective. Again, you're moving, and your mind is also clear. So you're kind of in a place you're with the earth. You just got great. If you can get sort of the right surroundings, it kind of opens up really good conversation. And then having conversation, open, honest conversation, man, that brings people together. Just
I
like
agree with that entirely. I find a lot of men are scared to be open and honest. There's a notion, I hear this a lot in practice. Men will tell me, like, why would I tell her or him exactly what I'm thinking? They're just going to use that as a stick to hit me. It feels a little sad to me because it
right,
means that a lot of people, I think, are in relationships where they don't feel they can be open with, let's just say, parts of themselves.
right.
And I was wondering, how do you, yeah, how did you get to spot of being really wanting to be in a more open and honest place?
Ooh, that took some time. I'll be honest. I was very much operating in a different way for a long time. I mean, to be honest, like I met my partner when I was 19. She was 18. Lots of changes were happening on a professional level, but then on a personal level too. So navigating what my idea of what being in the forefront, being in the spotlight, being successful meant as a man, what that meant I could do, what I should do because of what I heard is, you know what I mean? It's just you start to live out some of these things, and it's not always healthy. It's not always healthy, and that starts to build the kind of sort of distrust that leads to relationships that you know, people use things against you when you share something. They're going to use it against you. So again, it's like at some point you got to think of the relationship you built, and you have to be real about what you built. You built a house on unsolid foundation. Eventually, you're going to have to tear the house down, and you're going to have to re-pour the foundation and then build from there with proper plans. You know what I mean? And have a real good sense of what kind of home you want to build. If you go in like, I kind of like, sometimes like a tent out here, and we got this sand, it could work, it'll be all right. When the wind starts blowing and the rain comes, that tent is not gonna hold, right? So the so it's really about going, one, what kind of relationship do you have? What kind of relationship do you want? And is that the same thing? If they're not, then you gotta pretty much do the work. It's really just about doing the work. Make sure she feels, and as a man, like I would say, making sure my wife feels safe and protected does more for our relationship than anything. The more I reinforce and reassure her in my actions, in my being, in the consideration, the more I do that, man, the peace and happiness in my life is like leaps and bounds beyond what I even knew was possible. Like the kinds of things I didn't experience growing up type thing. So, but it took being honest, and that wasn't hard. It's a hard step, I'll be honest. It's real.
I think it's a new version of masculinity where strength comes from vulnerability. That
Right.
actually, you open up and say how you feel, and you share that, and from that comes strength in a relationship, but also strength. I find I just don't have much to fear because I don't know, I feel content with it and with people, knowing those things. I wanted to get to this point you said it's really interesting. I've been struggling with as a man. So I like that feeling too. When my wife and my two babies, our babies feel, well, when I have a sense everybody's safe, protected, well nourished, sleeping well, like I do get a little feeling like I'm doing it right, like I'm doing the daddy husband thing the way I want to do it. And
Right.
at the same time, we're in this moment, this kind of evolution of masculinity and thinking about the role of men in society and the patriarchy, where us as protectors, and I notice, I notice I'll open the door now that I'm out in public a little bit, like for women over, let's say 40, and they're very appreciative, and that signals to them I'm a good man. But
Right.
there's a way that actually I think with younger women that doesn't signal the same thing. There's
Right.
not this sense that like my role is to protect you. My role is more to be an equal partner with you.
Right.
And I've been trying to understand that and resolve that because whether it's just my old patriarchy bias or whether there's something in men as supporters and protectors that can hang out still in modern masculinity.
Mm. Man, that's a crazy. It's a trip that you're saying that because we talk about this. I think about it all the time. I was also raised to be very, um, like to be a gentleman. Um, though both of my parents stayed in my life, my mother was the kind of the primary caretaker, and she always made sure that we were opening doors and escort a woman. If she needs some help, if she dropped something, pick that up for her. Those kinds of things. And yeah, I do feel a shift in sort of, in sort of what those things mean. But at the same time, and here's another thing I'll say that kind of goes with what I was saying before. So, my wife and I were raised the same. Her father was very traditional. He's Persian, and so I think the role of the man and the woman in Persian culture is very traditional in that way. Whereas now, I think the roles of what is expected from what is masculine or what is feminine, I think that the gestures don't necessarily translate or are uh, expected or celebrated in the same way. But what I will
And
say,
I think they're seen as just that, as gestures in a way.
right,
Like it doesn't
yeah,
matter if you open the door for me if I'm not getting equal pay, there's nothing safe and secure about this, right? If I'm gonna, be dealing with the amount of misogyny women in America deal with, like, yeah, it's a
that's fair.
gesture.
And that's fair, right? I mean, if you think about sort of the real issue there is like I think everyone is a little over the posturing and the formalities and really getting to like yeah, like same thing with injustice in general. I was like, don't prop things up as if, you're really supporting a community and really talking that talk like you support them, but then on when the execution comes, you're not really showing up, right? So I guess in the same way, I understand how, the gesture of the role of a man is not as important as the real execution. And um, regardless of whether or not, a man is the caretaker or the provider or whatever, I think safety in a relationship is not necessarily a physical thing. Especially we live in a modern time, especially here in America. I mean, thankfully, it's a little less than, but it's in terms of partnership and relationship, whether it's romantic or friendship, like you want to feel like you could trust you could trust, and I
Well,
think that.
maybe also I think maybe there's a saying, there is a role to make your partner feel safe and protected, but it's not necessarily a masculine role. But I would also say that my wife makes me feel very, very safe and very protected, and that's in all kinds of ways. And um, so maybe we want to, yeah, that's no
Mm-hmm.
longer a masculine role. That's a role of every partner. And,
Yeah.
and to not just have these things in our relationships be gestures, right? But to
Mm-hmm.
really be engaged in a real, honest exploration. And I'd say evolution. I mean, since you all have known each other since you were 18, I saw somewhere you're in your 30s, right? So I'm a little older. My wife and I have been now married almost, like, it's only 20 years next month. And so,
Oh, it's beautiful.
and I think there's some, thank you, and it has been. I think the part that often gets missed, I see this clinically, where people are worried about like compatibility,
Right.
like you guys are together because you have a similar background in some way, and sure, those things help.
Mm-hmm.
But man, what really I think matters is this notion of feeling safe and protected with someone, and then evolving together.
Mm-hmm.
That you really feel, and that thing you said earlier, I really liked, which is you really have to bring all of yourself to a relationship and to be prepared for that. But also, I think be prepared for how the relationship changes you and confronts you, right,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that nothing else will.
Man, those adjustments that I mean, inevitably you learn and become a little bit of the people that you surround yourself with. And if this is your partner, you're going to be with them. So you're going to start to see things from different perspectives. And I think that naturally means that you're either going to adjust accordingly to sort of take